Welcome back to Founders in the Field, the show where we go behind the scenes with agency leaders, consultants, and creative founders to show you how they're building, scaling, and staying sane in the trenches. I'm your host, Stefan Bradley, and today's guest is Angela Frank, the founder of the Growth Directive. How are you doing, Angela?
I'm doing great, Stefan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today.
Appreciate you coming on as well. So let's dive straight in. For people who don't know your story, take us right back to the start of your journey, what made you start your own business, and give us an overview of what your role looks like today inside the Growth Directive.
Yeah, so I had a very meandering path into consulting. My path into being self-employed, though, was very quick. My husband joined the military, and in a world before remote work, we were moving every 6 months, and I needed something to do to make ends meet in between all the moves, right? I didn't want to work at Chipotle and then a bank and then have no career at the end of the 4 years. So I started my own little Etsy shop and grew that over 4 years while he was doing his enlistment. When he got out, I went, great, glad that's over. I really don't want to be shipping products to people. It's not what fires me up. But what I really loved about my business was marketing. So after that, I went into corporate, had a few marketing director roles, head of growth roles, and I found that coming from being self-employed, I just got so much work done. And I would come in and create all of this strategy, implement it, tweak it, and really at that 6-month mark, my job was done. I had really completed everything that I needed to do, and they no longer needed me full time. So at that point, I had a moment of reflection, and I said, what would be great, because I work with startups, is if startups could work with me on a fractional basis and use funds for elsewhere when it comes to their marketing strategy. And so I pitched my boss at the time and I said, hey, we've implemented the strategy, we've seen tremendous growth, but there's one more thing that I'd like to do, and I know we don't have any budget for it. I'm proposing that you take it out of my salary and I help you on a fractional basis. And the rest is history. As they say, I've been a full-time consultant for 4 years. I've specialized in health and wellness, but I've gotten to work with a variety of different startups and founders across not only health and wellness, but AI, SaaS, and service businesses as well. And so I've been able to really enjoy growing different types of businesses, seeing what works and doesn't on a massive scale instead of just working with one brand at a time. And so I find that each year I become more and more efficient with those strategies, and I get to learn more and more, which has been incredibly fulfilling personally.
Yeah, I don't know why it always amazes me with entrepreneurship journey. It's like people sort of go into it and then it leads to the next thing and the next thing. And it's kind of like it was, it's already written that that's what's going to happen. But it almost looks like, you done your own business Etsy shop, you found marketing in that, you went into corporate, and then you actually did the job so well that they didn't need you. Which didn't need you as a full time, which to a lot of people would be like, oh, she shot herself in the foot, but it didn't, because it actually led you then onto your next business as fractional. And it's crazy, isn't it? How entrepreneurship journeys are often something similar to that effect, where it's like you sort of go from one, and then that it sort of ends always come to an end, and then it leads you to the next thing and the next thing, and it's sort of like the Etsy shop was preparing you for the corporate role. The corporate role was preparing you for the fractional. And, as you're learning new skills all the way through that, it's just crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And it was something that you can't look forward and create this path, but looking back, you can see how one thing led to the next, which led to the next.
So what does your role look like today inside the Growth Directive?
Yep. So I'm a full-time consultant. Typically, I work with clients on a fractional basis, which means they hire me to come in and run their marketing. My specialty is in growth marketing, so I do a lot of paid ads, life cycle, and everything that really gets that growth engine churning from a marketing perspective. And so on a day-to-day, I bucket my time. Mondays and Fridays I do for deep work, so I don't take any meetings or calls on those days. And then Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm meeting with clients, I'm meeting with their team and making sure that the strategy is being executed according to plan, as well as troubleshooting anything that comes up.
And I've seen on your LinkedIn that you sort of specialize, as one of the things that you speak about a lot is about CAC and how businesses, are bleeding through, and their CAC's going up, and then you can come in and then kind of pinpoint where the bleed's coming from, and then use a strategy from then to either turn off, channels that are not bringing in revenue and sort of scale up the ones that does.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times when it comes to CAC, customer acquisition problems, it's a marketing mix problem. And so I find that sometimes people in the marketing department or the founders themselves are just too up close to the data, or they're reading it in a way that's maybe makes sense, but is counterintuitive to their actual growth. And so what I do is I really just identify where they're able to acquire customers effectively, move more budget to those channels, create a scaling plan, because as you scale budget, generally you lose CAC efficiencies. But when you look at the marketing mix as a whole and really understand how paid is not just paid, but it's also supported by these other channels, you're able to get some great CAC efficiencies.
I think a lot of businesses, companies have that sort of problem in the sense of, they put a lot on paid media, but if the organic isn't supporting the paid media, then it needs to work as in tandem with each other. And I feel like paid is like sexy, if you know what I mean. People are like, this brings in clients, this is the one, and they kind of all have to work together as a team sort of thing to actually support each other.
Yeah, 100%. And so a lot of people come with that problem from paid. And then when I take my discovery call, I poke around and see like, oh, well, what are you doing for email? Do you have an A/B testing like program on your website? And so I'm able to identify like, okay, you of course need to make some changes in your paid mix, but moving forward, we need to focus on these other areas as well.
So yeah, that kind of leads me to the next question. What trends are you seeing in the market today?
Yeah, so a few big trends. I think the biggest from a paid perspective is the Meta Andromeda update. Everybody's going crazy about that, but the Andromeda update really just confirmed something that people who have been really in paid for a while have noticed and known, which is that creative is king, right? So you can't go and use some like super highbrow like targeting plan anymore. Your creative needs to be really good, and your creative is what's doing the targeting now. So a lot of people are stressed out about the Andromeda update, but it's very straightforward. Just focus on your creative and making sure that you're consistently putting out a lot of it so that you can find the ones that are winning. The other thing that's big is how AI is impacting not only paid, but marketing as a whole. There's a lot of implications for AI for creating better and more efficient teams, but also there is a negative side as well, where there's this huge mistrust right now where everybody's trying to figure out if you are using AI in your writing, no longer can use an M dash or say, things that AI has picked up. And so as a marketer, I'm constantly being like, okay, how can we use these tools in a way that expedites our workflow while still building that trust with like prospects or consumers? And that's something that is going to just continue to evolve. Like every week, it seems like there's a new thing that people are picking up on. And so it's just constantly changing and evolving, and not only learning what cues people are picking up on, but also learning all of the new tools and things that are coming out to try and stay on the cutting edge.
Yeah, no, the AI tools, there's new ones all the time. And what do you think, as you're in paid media ads and things like that, how do you think the video generation's gonna sort of change the landscape, if you will? Because some of the things I see now of like the video text to video generation and the avatars and things like that, I think to myself, surely soon I don't think anyone's going to really know whether this is or isn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think right now it's still a little too polished for people to like use effectively for UGC, although I just did see somebody post on LinkedIn where they used a prompt and then did a different prompt, or they did the same prompt but asked for like pores and for it to look more iPhone native, and that looked a lot closer. Not quite there yet, but I think when we're looking forward at that AI generated video, on one hand, it's going to be amazing for teams, especially startup teams that I work with that are very resource, not strapped, but you need to be mindful where all of your resources are going. And so reducing production costs is going to be huge. On the other side of that, you also have a huge trust issue. So you need to be very mindful about the way that you're using AI in your marketing, because everything that we're doing from a marketing perspective is to build trust with people who are interested in what we have to offer and bringing them through that entire process and trying to reinforce that trust at every touch point. And so if you're using AI video and trying to be authentic and not being very straightforward, that could harm your trust. So it's a two-sided coin where it's going to be incredibly amazing, but then at the same time, you need to be mindful about how you're using it.
Yeah, no, it's something that obviously all AI sort of interests me, but I'm more on sort of like the back end, the workflows, emails, follow-ups, these types of things automating, but I haven't really touched the video generation. But when I do see it, like I was on LinkedIn earlier and I seen somebody who was doing a group call and three of them were avatars and only two of them wasn't. And I was like, whoa, this is getting, it must be on the way to be getting really good. And you're right, smaller teams or startups, things like this is just going to open up, a box that they could only they'd have to pay a lot of money for before this. Do you know what I mean? So the opportunities to be able to produce this type of content is going to open a lot of doors for them. As you said, I just kind of feel like if it gets that good and everybody's using it, it'll kind of, no one actually knows, but will eventually people just sort of accept it, or will it die type of thing? Will they be like, oh, I don't watch them anymore because it's all AI, or will they just be like universally like accepted? A bit like AI receptionists, like I think they will become universally accepted in the end because it is beneficial, do you know what I mean? And where everybody will have them, I feel like people eventually were just going to be like, yeah, well, this is the way it's done now. I wonder if it will be like this with ads.
Yeah. And I definitely think it's a case by case basis too, where some brands it will make sense. Maybe you're a SaaS startup, and so having an avatar walk you through the platform and the key selling features and like the different use cases, that's something where somebody probably doesn't mind if it's AI, if it's really well done. Whereas if you I work with a lot of maternity brands. So maybe if you have somebody talking about, something difficult that they struggled with, maybe trying to conceive or struggling with postpartum depression, that's not something that you want to use AI for
No.
because that's incredibly inauthentic. And so I think it's like something that is probably going to be universally accepted, but again, case by case.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anything that sort of you want to attach empathy with or emotion, things like that, that could go very wrong, especially for the two subjects you just mentioned there, do you know what I mean, where they're wanting to connect on a human and an emotional level. And if an AI is doing it where that isn't there, it can almost look flippant and almost like impersonal and basically the opposite, isn't it? So definitely,
Yeah.
I agree with you there. It will be sort of case by case and industry sort of by industry because, yeah. And also I think the more AI gets into it, I've said this probably on past episodes as well, I think as humans, we crave human connection. So I feel like the value of human connection will go up. But do you know what I mean? Similar to what happened in the pandemic, where we were all starved of that. And that's why afterwards, everybody wanted to go out and get human connection, which I feel like we're probably going to enter something similar with this. And it'll probably cost us more on a business point sort of thing to actually get that human connection because it's going to be so much more cost effective to run AI through these things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're seeing that too with a resurgence in like event marketing. I know that in a lot of like Slack groups that I'm a part of, they're doing a lot of IRL meetups and events and brand activations as well, I think are going to be bigger, where things like events and brand activations traditionally have lived more under brand marketing because they're things that you do, to get more brand awareness and to promote the brand. And they translate less into sales. But moving forward, like you said, that in-person connection, that human connection is going to be more and more valuable. And so I think that there will be more and more opportunity to apply a growth lens to things that have been traditionally seen as brand, just because there's that important human element there as well.
Definitely. Let's digress from AI a second. So could you walk me through your client acquisition process? How do you gain clients and how do you get leads and get on calls with people?
Yeah, so it's very straightforward. Most of my business comes through LinkedIn. So I have an inbound and an outbound strategy. Inbound is I create a lot of content on there speaking to my ICP and their pain points, and I'm trying to provide value and foster that relationship so that when somebody's ready to get support with their growth or their paid marketing, they go, oh yeah, Angela, and they click through my profile, go and book a discovery call, and begin that sales process. The other way is outbound. So I have a list of my ICPs that I have an outreach system automated to send connection requests to. And then when that connection request is accepted, it sends just like a, hey, glad to connect follow-up message. I work on a low volume of clients, so I have the liberty to make sure that I'm spending the time building relationships on the front end. So I don't pitch slap. I just send one like, hey, great to be connected. Let me know how I can be helpful message after the connection request is accepted. And then I let my content do the work.
Strategic plan, obviously going from outbound and inbound, and not having a high volume allows you to, be very personal with the conversations that you have, and can not have to have some crazy automations in place. You can have some basic automations in place, and then you not have to have it, automate. You can actually be the one speaking to them. So I can imagine your prospects, can value that a lot, having that human to human speaking, and speaking directly to you, as opposed to some bigger teams will have spoke to, a junior or, someone in the other department, whereas they're actually speaking directly to the founder with you. So would you say you have, like, through that strategy, would you say then you have, or that system, I should say, do you have like a predictable number of clients that you have each month?
Yeah, so for me, I'd like to book one sales call a week. In the way that I structure my retainers, they're month to month. And so I like to have sales calls on my calendar all of the time, whether I have availability or not. Perhaps, I can do like a one-off project or something, or put them on a wait list. Did I answer your question? I feel like I got off track there.
No, yeah, I just said if you had a number of sort of like a predictable number of qualified leads or leads that you have each month, but I think you got there, definitely.
Yeah.
Got there.
And so for me, I work with like 2 to 3 fractional clients at a time. And then I have advisory, which is less hands-on, just kind of like meeting with me on a weekly or a monthly cadence, and I can do project support as well. So for me, I can run my business on those 2 to 3 fractional clients, and everything else is icing. So I really only take on additional projects if I feel I can have, like super high impact on their business.
So Angela, where do you want to be in terms of business in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, so in the next 12 to 18 months, in addition to what I'm doing in my consulting practice, I'm actually working on a more passive education product geared toward people who are in corporate and wanting to make that transition into fractional or consulting. So I'm currently in beta right now, and in the back half of this year, I plan on opening doors for people who are interested in making that transition and having a plug and play system. So looking ahead, that is kind of like my core focus. Of course, I love consulting and being a fractional, and I will continue to do that. But having this more passive thing too will allow me to take on projects that maybe are equity based, or there's a little bit more like risk but higher upside, or things that are interesting to me for nonprofits. And so I'd like to continue to be able to expand my fractional work while have that corporate to consultant program as well, creating income in the background.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's definitely the most, like, the natural next step for you, like in the terms of the business model that you have now is obviously very hands-on, and it's hard. You can only take on, or you only want to take on a certain amount of clients to give them that, the experience that that you're selling type of thing, or that you're offering. But by having that also running alongside it is a much more scalable business, while still being able to provide the value doing the fractional work. But the having the second business there running in the background, you say passively, but also you don't have to be in the room or on the call or handling it. You can sell as many of them, do you know what I mean, as you please, without having the drain on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And for people who are consultants or fractionals, they find different ways to make their business more scalable. There's like the fractional agency model where you come in and create the strategy, but then your team, so basically you're an agency.
Yeah.
But it's a fractional agency model, or they'll take on more clients and then contract out the work. But for me, that's not something that feels like the path for me. I want to be working with my clients hands-on and creating those outcomes and working to build their team. For startups that I work with, I like to make sure that at the end of our engagement, they can either choose to renew and we can work on another growth project, or if they got the exact thing that they needed done, their team can run it. And then they can go to advisory, and I can just follow up with their team once a month and make sure things are going in the right direction. It's not for me to like contract out my work or like scale an agency model.
No, definitely. I think it's just smart, and I think it fits in with your model and the way you want to work as well. Like, building an agency is obviously good for some people, do you know what I mean? Of course, but it's a whole different thing from doing fractional on your own, to then running a team, to then having all these different sort of moving parts. It's a very different model, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the biggest difference too is like I could never sell my business of one, where somebody who creates an agency that can run without them, like you can have a nice exit. I know a lot of founders who have done that, but for me, I just really enjoy the work that I do and I'm not too worried about the exit.
So, Angela, my last question is if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in your business, what would it be and why?
Can I duplicate myself? I think the one thing that I struggle with is continuing to create content in a way that's authentic to me, but also allows me to show up regularly online, even when I'm busy. And so last year I had a great opportunity with a client that took all of my time, and I completely disappeared from LinkedIn for months. And then when their contract ended, I had to rebuild everything from scratch. And so this is the one thing in my business that I just need more time for. And I'm trying new tools and trying new things to expedite that. But yeah, that would be the biggest thing that I would solve.
Because the thing is, it's hard. Like there is obviously things you can automate, but the more you automate, when it's trying to look, it dilutes that. So it's kind of like, if you automate there, then it takes away there. If you don't automate there, then you can't be doing all these different things. If you've got clients that take up a lot of your work, do you know what I mean? Then you neglect the LinkedIn part of it. So it's definitely a conundrum that lots of people are probably feeling.
Yeah. And I had actually outsourced my Instagram content for the corporate to consultant program in Q4. And that was the greatest thing ever. And so I'm like, oh, I'll just do that for my LinkedIn. But I just feel like a lot of the people that I've met with, they're good at writing, but maybe not so versed in like how to actually create content for LinkedIn that gets clients in, who really understand like the USP that I'm going after and can speak to those ICP pain points. So like striking that balance, I think, is the biggest challenge for me this year.
Yeah, because I think LinkedIn is very different to the other social media. You have Instagram, Facebook, all these, but LinkedIn, you've got, excuse my French, but you've got to know your shit, and do you know what I mean? Like, otherwise you get found out. Like, you can't be posting about your industry that you're in, the job that you're in, what you do, or the business that you run. And if it sounds off just a little bit, then people are going to be like, that doesn't. It's a lot harder to not fake it, but do you know what I mean, to mimic that, do you know? Whereas when you're posting things on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I'm guessing, I don't have TikTok, but yeah, them type of things, it's a little bit less serious and a little bit more like playful, I would say. Whereas LinkedIn, from what I read anyway, I've seen like what the topics that you see there, they're very, very, it's all business orientated, of course, but it's a lot of people, you have to know your stuff, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And I also think that like everybody on LinkedIn, we're all professionals, there's a lot happening in the world. And so we're tired from all that. We have high stress jobs. And so the like tolerance for like bullshit on there is much lower, where if you're going on like Threads or Instagram or TikTok, you're relaxing. It's more of a casual thing, like you said. And so not only do you have to know your stuff, but people are always hypersensitive to like, oh, this is AI, or like sound more like you. And so there's a lot of that kind of discourse on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, it's a tough platform, but I'm glad that it exists because it's been a great way to build my business.
Angela, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Can my viewers and listeners who could be in the wellness industry or other industries that want to reach out and work with you, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn. If you are interested in your own discovery call or just to learn more about my work, it'll all be there for you. But yeah, I'd be happy to connect.
And this isn't sponsored by LinkedIn, everybody.
Yeah, no.
Just to make you aware. But yeah, everybody that's watching or listening, please like, comment, subscribe, send to a friend if you think they'd be interested in working with Angela or just knowing more, or someone who hasn't watched the podcast before. But we'll see you soon. We'll see you next time. And Angela, thank you again for coming on.
Stefan, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect.